Fragments of silicon, the perfect thing to separate light from dark during an equinox.
All right, welcome to a new installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always is Petty and Gollix, my humble accomplices.
I
And
wouldn't call me humble, but
I
sure.
guess,
I
would
mean,
you
I
prefer
try.
less flattering adjectives?
We'll workshop it.
As we always do. Anyway, so let's get to the news. Gollix, why don't you start us off since, well, you seem to be under the weather.
Yeah, I guess I think I'm going down with a cold or something. It started earlier this afternoon and it's progressed through runny nose to the point where I have a headache now. I've taken some extra vitamin C and stuff, so hopefully it won't get worse.
Do you have any access to any quill?
I'm not
Nah,
in the habit of really using that, but I
Mm,
think we might.
yeah. I mean, it all depends on if you want to sleep or not, day quill or nigh quill. But
Yeah.
it's effective. At least I found it effective, especially as a sleep aid. Anyway, so health concerns aside, anything else going on news wise?
Not really. We missed MS Saga again last week because Mac had a issue, but hopefully we will start again this Saturday.
I mean,
And
I did see a notice about that.
he
Like,
plans to. I know that, but
yeah, I mean, he's been planning that for a few weeks now, I'm sure, but
uh-huh.
that doesn't necessarily preclude it happening now, does it?
It is possible that it would not. Um, the I finally ended up pre-ordering Super Robot Wars 30 today.
Oh yeah, like
Since they confirmed that I was trying to decide what edition I want to get, but they confirmed that the version with vocals for the music would only be with the special edition, so I decided to get that.
okay.
That's not really a whole lot else going on, I don't think.
All right. Well, Petty, it's your go.
Um, Not a whole lot's been going on over here. Um, yeah, just been kind of playing games and doing the weekly Digimon tournament stuff. Though I did hear, unfortunately, one of the regulars, his car got broken into and his cards were stolen. So that's kind of unfortunate.
Cool. I also have questions about who is going around breaking into cars and stealing Digimon cards.
I mean,
Um,
trading cards are a big business currently, so
Yeah, also I guess they were in like just a box.
That makes more sense. Like, if it was just happened to be stolen rather than specifically stolen.
Yeah.
Like, like I think
Though
the
he
big
did have
business.
some fairly rare cards, like there's a card called Lucamon, which the regular version is going for like $50, and he had that, and the alternate art, which is going for almost 80.
Still more sensible than what's going on in the Pokemon world, from what
Oh
I
God,
understand.
yes, good lord.
Like, I mean, that's just utter insanity.
or Magic. I think I've heard they've been doing like ridiculously frequent releases or something.
Not
It's
just
not
that, but
exactly
ridiculous prices.
yeah. I mean, the local gas station is selling Pokemon cards starting at $5 a pop.
Yeah, that sounds like fucking locals pricing.
yeah, it's just nuts. So be glad you're not attached to that insanity, like in any.
Yeah.
But how are the Digimon tournaments going?
Pretty good. We actually got approved for the to be an official tournament store. So in November sometime we are having what's basically going to be a qualifier for the regionals, and then you can go into the world championship after that. So that's kind of awesome.
Uh-huh.
And let's see. Yesterday was my mom's birthday, so that was interesting.
Okay, that's a specific word to use.
My mom talks a lot, so everywhere she went, she had to tell everybody about it was her birthday.
Huh.
So she was driving both me and my sister insane. And yeah, I think that's it for me.
Okay. All
So
right.
next victim.
Well, I mean, only one person left. Like, at least under current configurations, unless there are phantom people around or something. So, let's see. What is my news this week? Let's see. Still going through Quake. Um, you know, beat the second mission pack. I like that a lot less than the first.
Mm,
Like, yeah, second one there got a fair bit sloggy because an average map had over 100 monsters. Like,
yeah, sounds about right.
I mean, I think that it was a bit of a demonstration of what they could do with the Quake engine at that particular moment in time. And
Yeah.
now I'm going through the third episode, the first one that was done by Machine Games. Like, it's a lot brighter than I'm used to Quake being. Like, you know, also the secrets aren't really all that secret. Like, they've just kind of been there. Like, some of them have like literally been there, or oh hey, it's the most obvious secret I could find. Like,
It's less literal secret and more like a point of discovery.
in some cases, like yeah, it's like I got a secret achievement, like going down like a hallway that was pretty obvious, for example, or here is this alcove slightly to the left of this dark hallway. Like, it's definitely a far cry of what I encountered in previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
To say the least. Still good. I mean, let's see. Wrapped up playing the main game I'm reviewing. Didn't finish it, but it's more I've played enough to get a good grip of it, and it's probably the most fine, I guess, games I've played in a while. Like,
One of those.
well, it's not bad. It's
Mm,
solid. I just didn't find it all that compelling personally. Like, it's honestly, I think, because of the space I was playing it in. It's a really bite-sized thing. Probably would work better on a Switch, but
mm.
we'll save that for Sunday. Let's see. Also, I have gained access to a new vehicle, like
Oh man.
a Chrysler Pacifica, much better than the old um, Dodge that I was using, like, to say the least. Like, um, gets much better gas mileage and has 6 cylinders instead of 4, powering an SUV. Trust me, it makes a difference. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I find the gas mileage to be a lot better, like, because
Yeah, funny how
it's
that
not,
works.
yeah. Anyway, and yeah, that is my news for the week. Let's see. So, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And after a couple of false starts and months and all that finagling, we are finally pleased to welcome from Magic Chopstick Games, Thomas Darby.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on.
No problem, no problem. Anyway, so how we like to get started properly is we like to get to know the person behind the game, studio, and whatnot. We do this by asking this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and professional level?
So personally, I started writing video games. I'm going to date myself here, but I started writing video games on my family's old Apple IIe way, way back in the day. And they were really silly little type it in from the magazine type of things. And that grew into starting to code out bigger things. I'd hide my graphing calculator in my English book in high school so I could write stuff on the calculator. And I just kept enjoying doing it. And the first version of Jardinine that we're seeing here was released back in the early 2000s. And it was a fairly big hit, and it's just kind of been going ever since. This is the third iteration that we're watching now. The first one to be released for mobile, and the first one to be built in quite some time.
Indeed, like you mentioned, the first iteration was released in 2001, which is like several lifetimes ago in terms of video games. I mean,
Yes. Ve-
like I suppose my first question is like, what was it like trying to put out and make a game in 2001? I mean, we're talking pretty much everything what we think of in modern indie video games.
Right. It was a lot harder and it was a lot easier. You didn't have even a fraction of the tools that you have today. You had basically your computer programming languages, you had things like Photoshop early versions, and you had some other tools, very little in terms of actual video game making tools or guides or anything like that. I looked across a application called Blitz Basic back then, which was kind of, almost like a precursor to Godot, the modern game engine that coming out with the MIT license. But
Mhm.
it was really hard to find the resources you'd need to use. I mean, I used an old standard singing microphone for sound effects, for example, and you had to hand edit all of your level files in a text editor, that sort of thing. But it was also kind of easier in a lot of ways because the scene was nowhere near as crowded as it is today. You had a few sources for games. You had a place called Happy Puppy Games. You could go to download.com and a few other places to get free downloads and that kind of thing. So it was a much narrower audience and a much less busy scene than it is today. I guess because it was harder to do it back then, you just didn't have quite as much competition.
Well, it's not just a matter of competition, but a matter of outlets. Like, when we're talking 2001, we're talking pre Steam existing in any form, for example.
Yeah.
Much less, something like itch.io or, I could go on here. It's like just, there was no, like, I think the biggest sort of repository for indie games I could think of is Newgrounds.
Yeah, and that was it. That was really it, and the monetization was almost non-existent. You could basically sell a download, and that was about it. You didn't have any kind of more advanced monetization options.
Mm-hmm.
None of the clever tricks that this one clever trick sort of thing. None of that was around back then either. So it was very much a different kind of scene. You were still pressing CDs back then.
Yeah, and keep in mind, and this is just the PC scene. Like consoles. Oh,
No,
seeing a game like,
it
Yardinian.
wasn't even a consideration for an indie developer. You just didn't release to a console.
Yeah, I'm like, unless you were a very, very big hit, like Snood comes to
Right.
mind.
Someone would track you down. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and even then, we're talking. You're probably more likely to end up on a handheld than, or maybe one of the early mobile phones.
Right.
Like,
Back when you used the keypad to steer, and it took you had about a 3 hertz or three times a second refresh rate.
and yeah, like, So I suppose another question in that regard is, are you pleased with the amount of, let's say, progress that has been made in the field in the past 2 decades?
Generally, yeah. I mean, the indie scene really exploded in the teens, and you started seeing things like Nuclear Throne and all of these small companies managing to get footholds. And it was still a huge chunk of luck, but you at least had some chance of getting visibility and some chance of getting seen. And that, along with the increase in tools and technology that you could use, it really, even if you didn't get seen, you had such an easier job of actually putting what you wanted to put together. And you had not just the creation tools, but the collaboration tools, things like GitHub and all of the various communications channels that exist today. You just didn't have that back then. You were on email and phone, maybe.
Also AIM, like,
Yep, ICQ, that kind of thing.
yep, like, it was the perhaps most advanced communication tool, in terms of instant contact you had on a PC. Like,
Well, and it was amazing too. I mean, you could chat with anyone anywhere in an instant. It was mind blowing for the time.
yes, it was. So, moving past the generalities of the age, was there a particular reason you wanted to make a Brick Breaker, a Brick Breaker series at that?
So no, not really. It was I'd just gotten started with a quasi serious effort at actually making a real game, and following actual sound advice, I decided to start simple, just with that ball and battle and brick game. That's something very straightforward. You're not going to bite off more than you can chew, at least not at first blush. And it was a fun thing to pursue. I was unemployed at the time, looking for work, and I needed something to distract me after I'd just gotten like the sixth or seventh rejection letter of the day. So I'd spent a few hours every day just kind of working on this game. And I was married at the time. I'd been married for a couple of years at that point. I still am, but we were living together at her parents' house because we were in between moves. And one morning at I think somewhere around 3 a.m., I just said, "Bolt awake," sat upright in bed, bolt awake, and I turned to my wife and said, "There'll be gnomes living in the bricks, and they'll throw things at you." And then I fell right back asleep. And that was really the genesis for the whole game. It all made sense after that, and it all came together after that.
I'm like,
Usually people get committed when they spout off with something like that.
yeah, that is certainly a revelation.
It was. It was kind of a eureka moment in the bathtub sort of thing.
I mean, it seems to be the case since you did it.
Yeah, and it worked. It people loved it, and they downloaded it, and it even got reviewed, and it was quite a hit. And it was a lot of fun. And then I found a real job and went to work for a while, and then a few years later, I got the itch again, and I made the second version of the game, and that was a hit. And wash, rinse, repeat. It's this is the third one around, and I've had a great time. It's built in Unity. I learned a lot of stuff that I wish I could have known way back in the day. I learned a lot of stuff that I wish was as simple as it was back in the day, instead of 50 lines of code to try and load something. It's new complexities, new simplifications. It's been quite a trip.
And we loaded them from audio cassettes to both ways uphill, and we liked it.
That's right. You fast forwarded to the number on the counter, and you pressed play and waited 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm like, thankfully, I never had to experience cassette loading. Like, we had an IBM PC growing up, but I don't think this, like, if cassettes were ever part of that particular computer space, I don't remember it. Like, it was all discs. Like, anyway, so do you have some specifics that as to what you've learned and what's changed? What's gotten easier with this new version and making it?
I keep learning the same lessons. Scope creep is the death of everything. You gotta really just stay committed and don't try to do everything all at once. Be happy with good enough because I'm a perfectionist, so I'd have to just keep telling myself that's good enough. Don't spend another 5 hours tweaking that pixel back and forth. Just let it go, let it be, and you'll be fine. And the, look for the new tools, look for the new tricks. Google is an absolute godsend. It will tell you everything you need to know, which is typically something on Stack Overflow. So there's all sorts of knowledge out there. You get good at finding it. You get good at incorporating it. You get good at tweaking it for what you want to use it for.
Oh, that is certainly handy. Like, and yeah. Well, as far as another question in regards to scope creep and timing and all that, how long does it take to make one of these brick breakers?
So to make a brick breaker, you can probably do the basics in a weekend. It's all of the extra bells and whistles that you put on a thing that makes it really eat up all your time. And there you go. You've got a few things going on right there. But it's what happens is you get the basics down and you get it playable and fun, and then you realize, well, there's something a little weird going on here. So you dig into it and you realize, well, Unity provides this wonderful little interface to do this, but it's not quite working the way I want it to, and there doesn't seem to be a way to make it do what I want it to. So I'll just rip this out and I'll build it myself and make it work the way I want it to. And 2 weeks later, it works exactly the way I want it to. And that happens for so many different things. And then you'll also discover that the advice you read one day on one website, you'll stumble across something the next day on a different website, or a month later on a different website that says, oh yeah, they used to tell you to do X, but that's just a terrible idea. You really want to do Y because this, and this. And then you get to make the decision, well, do I want to do that, or am I happy with X?
Well, sometimes what's most optimal changes over time.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. And when you take a long time to build your game, everything's going to change. So
Granted, a long time to build your game can be relative, especially on this show, since I'm assuming that this took like a few months to make.
no, this was several years of
There it goes.
That's just it. It's it wasn't there was everything else going on in life at the same time, and I had a stretch where I could dedicate a lot of time to it, but I also dedicated a lot of time to family and other things and maintaining the house and that kind of thing at that time. But
right.
It's the sort of thing that's the curse of the indie. You know, you're your own boss, so the boss doesn't notice if you take the day off and do other stuff, and that adds up.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, you've been. It sounds like you've been. This has been a part-time affair, which is still a bit of a contrast to we have had developers on the program who have been working, full time on a game for like 3 to 5 years.
Right, and this was mostly part time. Like I said, towards the end, there was a stretch where it was full time. The trick with that is, again, with scope and ambition. I released this to Windows and to Mac and to Linux and to Android and iOS. And so naturally I got into things like responsive menus and how do you position things on the screen and what do you do if someone resizes or tilts their device. And, I really need a build pipeline. How do I want to do that? And it spirals into something much bigger than just the game itself. And then you've got the in-app purchasing you deal with, and you've got the website, and you've got the database, and all that great stuff, and it adds up.
Yep. Because, you weren't building one of these. You were building 5, essentially.
Yeah, 13 roughly, yeah.
It's like just going on baseline platform.
Oh, yeah. But then there'd also be different builds for each platform, and it quickly spirals out of control. You've got the Steam build, you've got the Google Play build, all that great stuff.
And I'm assuming that you're a solo indie dev?
Yes, this game is 100% solo.
Even things like the music.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
GarageBand is an amazing tool for generating music, and
indeed.
it's free. It's free too. So, to go back to the tools, that's stuff you just didn't have back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, God, what even was there 20 years ago in terms of audio?
20 years ago, I had my Yamaha keyboard, the decent synthesizer, and I just piped that straight into my audio jack on the computer and hit record. So
Yeah.
that's what it was back then.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds about right. Like, uh, anyway, and in terms to Yardinians the third here,
Mhm.
what's been changed? What's different? What is new about this version?
So the biggie is there's a lot more polish to pretty much everything. I've been able to use, I mean, you can see the particle effects are much more robust than they had been in the past. I've got a lot more variety to the behavior and the styling of the names themselves.
Mhm.
Everything's just, it's a bump in quality, it's a bump in resolution, and it's a bump in attention to detail. The
Oh,
core
neat.
of the gameplay is pretty much what it's always been, but the the touches and the details have come a ways since the last version.
And that makes sense. I mean, this is still a brick breaker, and that's going to have a core set of values no matter what you
Exactly, exactly. But again, I introduced new kinds of bricks. There's a teleport brick that'll shoot your ball all over the place. There's pirate. There's a admiral name that drops anchors on you. There's money bags name that'll throw big coin sacks at you. A bunch of different changes and reactions to the ball, all that sort of thing. If it gets too close to a name, it'll shudder and draw back in terror until it's passed.
Right. And are the levels themselves new? Like, is there any classic levels that come to this, or is it
Yes.
all new designs?
So in the tradition with the previous one, I've included all of the original classic levels from the first and second game, and there's also another large set of new levels to go with it, and an infinite mode that procedurally generates level after level that you'll probably never see again.
Right. Is there a level editor?
Not released to the public because it was incredibly clunky and kludgy, and I had to keep hitting it with a hammer to make it work properly.
Oh, right. But that, I suppose, framing this another way, has anyone tried to mod the game?
I don't know that they have. It's still fairly early on, and I don't know that it's gotten the traffic that I would have hoped it would have gotten. But it's certainly something that someone could give a shot if they wanted to. It's the files are mostly just straight up image files and text files, and fairly editable, I'd imagine.
Fair enough.
Said the guy who spent way too much time tweaking them by hand and knows what all the various values do in that. But
Right. And in regards to the mobile version, the first question there is, was there any particular reason why you wanted to bring this series to mobile in the first place?
lots of people wanted it. Lots of people kept asking, "Hey, when can I play this on my phone? When can I play this on my tablet?" And it's the sort of thing where that drove some of it, and some of it was just I want to figure out how to do that. I want to figure out what's different, what you got to consider, and are there things to consider with that? Yeah, it's a little bit different from desktop development. You need to pay closer attention to your memory. You need to pay closer attention to your performance. You've got multi-touch. You've got different screen sizes. You can rotate the thing. So it's and now you've got safe zones where, thanks to the curved screens, you can't rely on being able to see the corners of the device. You need to know exactly where that square is. So that's another fun dimension.
Thanks,
And
Samsung.
Yeah. Well, and the notch. Don't forget the notch.
Oh,
Thanks,
God.
Apple.
Right. And did you build this for universality or a specific like phone or tablet device?
This will run on pretty much any Android or iOS device that has the horsepower to actually power it. I built it to be universal. The mobile experience is very, very, very similar to the desktop experience. The gameplay is unchanged. The only real difference is some changes to menus and for Android, some file quality differences just to enhance performance and the fact that you're using a finger and not a mouse.
Right, and that was going to lead to my next question, and that is dealing with the finger problem. That is to say, you use your finger on a touch screen, and you don't necessarily see the thing that you're moving.
So to get around that, that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to figure out early on because I hate it when you can't see what you're doing on the screen. So one of the deciding factors was you'll notice the game field itself is square and there's an awful lot of dead space on the sides. That is by design. It lets you play vertically as well as horizontally with the roughly the same amount of real estate. So you're not losing out if you play vertically versus horizontally. And if you play vertically, you've got a whole bunch of nice dead space right at the bottom of the screen where you can swipe your finger to your heart's content and not mess up anything going on in the actual action.
Sounds like a better solution than what I often see, and that's virtual buttons.
Oh, God, no, 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 no.
I think we just triggered something.
Oh, that's just so lazy. And I mean, I respect lazy. You need lazy to be able to pull something off like this, but that's just that's lazy at the cost of the people playing the game. That just doesn't fly.
You're not wrong. I do not care for that play style on a phone either.
No, no.
And how did you structure the game on mobile? You mentioned like in-app purchase. I assume that it's like you get the first few levels for free, and you have to buy additional chapter packs.
So, but it's the same structure on both mobile and desktop. It is on the classic energy structure of you've got 10 levels worth of energy, and you get one additional level every 5 minutes. And if you want unlimited energy, you buy the full version.
I see.
Short, simple, easy to implement.
Right.
Well, easier.
Is there a light ad-supported version?
No, it's just the one version. If you want the unlimited energy, you buy the full version effectively.
Yeah. I suppose the question that beckons is, which version has been doing better monetarily, the mobile version or the PC version?
The Steam version has been doing the best, surprisingly enough to me. The mobile version, I've got some decent traction on the Google Play Store, but people don't spend a lot of money on the Google Play Store. I've got some traction on the Apple Store, but again, that's a really crowded pack to try and break through. So that's the visibility question is really what drives that. But it did okay on Steam at the launch, and it's still continuing to do okay on Steam.
That's good to hear, I suppose. Any plans to bring this game to any of the other storefronts? Like, is it on Itch? Is it on Dog? That kind of thing?
It is not. I could probably be convinced to do that, but at the end of the day, it's on Steam and it's on the main website, and it's all effectively the same thing. And it's really just a question of how many places do I want to be managing and how many places do I want to try and keep track of.
Right. And have you given any consideration to consoles?
I have, and that is really tough to break into. Especially with it's from what I've been hearing, Microsoft's been kind of weaning themselves away from independent games on the consoles, short of the larger successes. Switch, you need to know someone at Nintendo, I suspect, to actually get in there, or have a very, very compelling company or pedigree behind you. and I wouldn't even know where to begin with PlayStation.
Largely the same from what I've heard. Like honestly, from what I understand, if you're an indie right now, your best bet is actually with the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in terms of getting onto the store, but in terms of sales. A lot of indies prioritize the Switch, and
Right.
maybe later you get the PlayStation, Xbox, unless Microsoft or Sony headhunt you basically. Like,
Right. And at one point, I had a working version on my Xbox upstairs. I got the developer account and everything set up, but it was such a pain of a process to try and get it published.
right. And also, I guess in regards to the current finished version, are you planning on doing any updates? Like level packs or whatnot?
I will. Level pack is the most likely update I'd do right now. Again, I back in the saddle of full time work, so I really haven't had much of a chance to touch any of my gaming stuff lately. But yeah, definitely level packs are a possibility. Adding more types of name. You're in the tutorial levels right now, but there's a bunch of different kinds of name that pop up in the main game.
All right. And have you thought about anything new in terms of games creation, or been too busy with the job, so to speak?
Oh, I always have stuff kicking around my head, and when I get a chance, I'll write some stuff down, but nothing quite ready to present just yet, unfortunately.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right then. I think that is my gamut of questions. I will see if my colleagues here have anything additional if they wish to ask on their own.
I think I'm good.
I also am good.
All right then. Well, Thomas, it was lovely having you on the program and finally getting to talk about these games. Granted, we didn't get a chance to talk about everything we wanted to, but we ran into some issues in that regard.
Yes, yeah. Sorry about that.
It's fine. It's fine. Thankfully, there was a series that we could talk about in depth, and we managed to do that. Right. So, at any rate, the game is how do you pronounce it?
I pronounce it Jardinane.
Chardonnay. It is.
You probably have to be French to pronounce it properly.
It helps. It's a smashing together of the word for garden and gnome in French. So there you have it.
It sounds like Chardonnay.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Chardonnay. Anyway, the game is available on Steam, and there's a direct download site. What is the address there?
It's jardinane.com.
Okay. It's retailing for $14.99. Be sure to pick it up today. So, Eddie, play us in the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion. Let's see. Well, since the Nintendo Direct got announced for tomorrow, expect coverage of that next week.
Oh, we can't talk. We can't talk about it today before it's already happened.
I mean, granted, we could probably fill in some speculation here.
Yeah, no, I'm mostly joking.
Like, I mean, the fucking considerations over the final Smash character alone could burn 20 minutes. Like, but that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about a random old ass title. Mainly because I saw a tweet about somebody writing a 3,000 word essay on Salamander / Life Force. And sure, why I said, would I write that? No, I would outline it and talk about it for about a half an hour on my show. And so here we are. Sometimes the magic happens in the weirdest places.
Indeed.
Like, but I suppose the first question that's probably going to crop up to a lot of people, especially in this day and age, because we're talking about a game that first got released in 1986. What is Life Force or Salamander? Um, and the answer to that is it is a spin-off of Gradius, which is once again another old school shmup series. Um, you can experience this in the Konami Arcade Classics collection, which is on all of the current consoles. So it being old isn't necessarily a preclusion to not knowing what the fuck it is. Like, it's available. It's just you have to be in the mind to play old ass games. So it goes. Like, anyway, in America, Life Force has a very interesting legacy because it basically served as Gradius 2 to those who had an NES. Even though there is an actual Gradius 2, which, I suppose another thing we have to talk about, and you're seeing it here with Salamander and Life Force, is Konami was just absolutely fucking dreadful at keeping their series named properly. Like, because
And it never gets any better.
it gets better eventually, but not in the 80s, not in the 8-bit days, certainly, because like Gradius itself had a spin-off series called Nemesis on the MSX, but the Game Boy Gradius came in as Nemesis, while the Nemesis 2 came over here as Gradius Space Battle, or like Galactic Battle or something like that. You get the subheading there, and that's just like one example. Gradius 2, it's released in the West, was called Vulcan Ventures. Not even joking about this. I don't know how they got from Gradius 2 to Vulcan Ventures, especially since Gradius pretty worldwide was popular. Like, at least with Contra and Probotector, there was a specific reason that got changed in Europe. It is because Germany said killing humans, not good. Killing robots, A-okay. So
Or,
instead of
pretty obvious reasons, I think.
right, I mean this affected quite a few games that got released in Europe actually, but
That's a
Contra
topic
is
for
one of
another
the more
time.
Contra is one of the more notable examples, and since Contra didn't really have a connection in Europe until much later when they unified the brands, so to speak. You got Geizor as the original arcade inference of Contra over there. Like I said, this thing is all over the place. In the specific case of Salamander and Life Force, there is actually a difference between Salamander and Life Force, the arcade versions. That is because the original Salamander game was a lot less, let's say, organic than Life Force. Life Force Arcade, because there's also the NES version, which is kind of a combination of the two. This shit gets confusing. But yeah. So the big deal with Salamander was it's a fusion of the two major shmup types of the era: horizontal and vertical. It's like first stage horizontal, second stage vertical. Though I can't say it actually acquiesces to what a vertical shooter was at that particular moment in time. That is to say, a lot of shmups were aping Xevious, even in like 1986. So you had your air targets and your land targets. Your regular shots destroy the flying enemies, and your bombing bullets destroy the things on the ground. It was one of those ways of simulating 3D back in ye olden times when you couldn't really do that.
Ye olden times.
anyway, another facet of Salamander specifically was it got rid of the signature innovation of Gradius, and you two probably don't know what that is, so I'll just tell you. And that was the upgrade bar.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it's one of the things you think of when you think of the Gradius series. You unlock all of the items that you power up with. And that is the thing that really made Gradius stand apart. And that was taken out of Salamander. But this is where Life Force comes in. That was brought back in on that version of the game. And indeed, the other big change to Life Force is the story. Instead of fighting an advancing alien army, you're going into this giant alien organism and killing it from the inside. So everything has been well, not everything. I watched a playthrough of the arcade Life Force, and they did change some stuff, like a couple of the bosses, a lot more biomechanical. In terms of their skin, they were functionally the same. But like the fourth boss, they didn't touch. Sixth boss, they didn't touch. There were still some areas. This still looks like the volcano. It was passable, but could have been better in terms of reskinning. And yeah, I don't know why this change occurred between Life Force and Salamander, but it did. So there's an actual differentiation between the two. I'm not sure what version we got in terms of the arcade back in the day. I never saw this game in the arcade. Oh, right. Getting back to the other principal version, the original Salamander arcade used this instant upgrade system. Like all the power ups were frozen, and you pick them up. Like instead of saving up your energy to buy the power ups, you just get them. It was fairly streamlined, but I think the upgrade system, bringing that back, was the better option, because that is really what defines this series, spin-offs and all. And getting back to my own personal experience with this game, I played the NES version. That seemed to be the really accessible one. Because, like I said, as far as I understand, Life Force was released over here, but I did not see an arcade, a Chuck E. Cheese that had this. I did see, I do remember Gradius being in a Chuck E. Cheese, but that was the NES Play Choice 10 version. Still counts, I think. And getting back to another conundrum of the legacy here, this function is Gradius 2, even though there was a Gradius 2 and it got ported to Europe, and it never got brought over here until like the mid 2000s, and nobody seems to know why. Or if the reason it's been obscured, I don't know, it's just one of those mysteries of the universe. So Life Force on the NES, there's actually a few Salamander and Life Force. That is to say, it's got all the stage layouts and all of the original boss configurations of Salamander, but it's got the upgrade system of Life Force. So you can essentially think of it as a fusion of the two games. Though over here they had to make some cuts, which was not all that unusual to Konami games that got brought over here. Though as far as I know, I don't think this used the disc system like Contra did. Though it might have, because there was multiple endings, and the game did the Metroid thing, specifically with Player 2. That is the other thing that connects Life Force to Gradius. The ship you are playing is the Vic Viper. The Vic Viper is the signature ship of the Gradius series, but I'm not sure if it was this or Gradius 2 that introduced the second player, the Lord British ship, or Road British in some translations. I'm pretty sure they were meant Lord, unless they were trying to avoid a lawsuit with Ultima, since that had a Lord British.
That is a thing.
Right, but I'm pretty sure Lord British is a term that existed before Ultima.
It is.
Yeah,
It's just Richard Garriott really likes it.
I'm aware. I'm just saying that this is the kind of thing that comes about because of other things of this nature. Like, but yeah, the game also got ported to some other systems, like a not necessarily signature version, but a notable version is the MSX version, because, and this is something I learned during research, it sneakily took advantage of the particulars of the MSX system. And
Yeah,
once
I
again,
watched that video today, and that is a thing.
yeah, that's why I actually put that in the Discord, because
Apparently, if you put a game in the first cartridge slot and put another thing in the second cartridge slot, it can actually read from some things from the game in the second cartridge slot.
Something lock-on technology before lock-on
And
technology.
kind of, yeah.
And Konami really made use of that on the MSX. It's the entire basis for why La Mulana got created. Like, because the MSX had 2 cartridge slots, and you could connect 2 games made by the same manufacturer together. And apparently, in the case of Salamander / Life Force, in order to actually beat the game, or get the good ending, you needed the Gradius 2 cartridge in slot 1.
Yeah, the last stage used assets that were stored in that cartridge because, sure.
Yeah, I'm like, that is some fucking 2008 Prince of Persia shit right there. Like, I think I can.
I was also very
recall that.
impressed by those shenanigans they had to do to get like colored sprites to fucking work.
Right. I mean, it's like the MSX could do scrolling, but you had to work on it, especially in the earlier iterations. Like,
it doesn't
but-
have built-in scrolling, but that doesn't mean you can't make it do scrolling.
yes, like, there was also the PC Engine version of the game, which, from what I've seen, was probably the most arcade faithful of the versions back in the day.
Was that the PC Engine's thing?
Yeah. I mean, the PC Engine was, certainly more powerful than, the NES and probably a few of the MSX iterations. So it also got ported to the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, and ZX Spectrum. Do not know much about this, but according to Wikipedia, the Commodore 64 version was highly praised by the critics of the day, particularly Zap 64, which was apparently a real magazine with a real title that was that. Like, if they still existed, I would mock them for it. Though missing 2 of the 6 stages, the simultaneous 2-player mode, and the gameplay being much easier than its arcade counterpart, which makes sense because we're talking about, what is presumably the latest in arcade technology versus a Commodore 64, which was modest even when it was first put out in 1982.
Well, and also one of the issues with the C64 is it's kind of like modern hardware where it's hard to expand it. Like, the consoles of the time, you could put extra chips in the cartridges to make it run a little better. C64 could not, other than maybe a RAM expander.
Like, that was definitely the case with the MSX version, but had they put out an Amiga version, they probably could have gotten that.
Mhm.
But yeah, no idea how these. God, the ZX Spectrum. That that probably like just knowing how bad that keyboard was,
Oh
probably a
God.
disaster. Like, and you know, yeah, it's like Konami games could look good on the ZX Spectrum. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles looked good on the ZX Spectrum. A game that doesn't make your eyes bleed on the ZX Spectrum is good because they didn't understand what color bleeding is.
Oh
Like,
God.
I do know enough about the ZX Spectrum to know that. Amstrad CPC, I got no clue. Like it's one of my knowledge weaknesses, let's say.
Yeah, the CPC was a touch before my time.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Amstrad CPC was that's UK Europe. Like that is the basis for the ARM chip. Let's say, but we do not have the time or the
Oh yeah,
inclination.
that's another one, an own episode on its own.
Yeah, I'm like, but this was not the end of Salamander. There was a sequel, Salamander 2, like, which fared a lot less well, from what I understand. I didn't play this one, and indeed, Salamander 2 hasn't seen the re-release history that the first game has, so can't really speak about it. But I think it's telling that this got like one sequel like a good 10 years after the first one came out versus the mainline Gradius series, which got 5 mainline series and a bunch of spin-offs. Like yeah, and as far as it is as a shmup, yeah, it's a solid title. I honestly like it a lot better than the original Gradius game. Speaking from the NES versions of those. But that's because, quite frankly, I think Life Force was a better designed game. Gradius, once you get past the upgrade system, is a bit basic. I mean, it makes sense because that was 1985, and the shmup genre just kind of exponentially took off from there. Like, in terms of development, and Life Force is definitely a showcase of that. Right then. Anything else to add to this particular conversation?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, then. So that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments Silicon. The week ahead. So, as far as I know, we do have a new episode of The Last News Desk on the Left happening in about 30 minutes. Thankfully, Mac's scheduling problems have not extended to that program currently. And no Friday show, as mentioned, that got delayed till December. Hopefully, all things are sorted out by then. And on the Sunday reviews, hang on. I hate this when I have the wrong window open. Like, okay, there it is. We were having game reviews of Tetragon, which is a puzzle platform game where you rotate the screen. Bone Marrow for the Nintendo Switch. Super Destronaut DX2 for the PlayStation 4, and Sheepy, a sheep-based freeware platform game. So until, well, about a half an hour from now, I shall wish you good gaming.